Beneath a sky the color of bruised iron, the land waited in silence. Snow swirled over the high peaks, cloaking the mountains in a shifting shroud. The wind howled between the ridges, carrying with it scents of pine, ash, and the faint metallic taste of an oncoming storm. On the horizon, the last fires of autumn were being snuffed out one by one, replaced by the pale blue light of winter's dominion. From the very first breath, you will want to walk with this tale until its final step, for only then will you see the shape hidden in the frost, and learn which crown will be claimed, and which will be burned. The first snows of the long winter fell in Valethorn before the harvest was even done. The farmers cursed under their breath as they hacked frozen sheaves from the fields. Their breath came in white puffs, drifting into the air like the ghosts of words too bitter to be spoken aloud. Far above the fields, the black towers of Valethorn keep rows out of the white landscape, their jagged battlements like the teeth of a predator watching the lowlands. Lord Caelan Drakemere stood at the highest parapet, his cloak snapping in the wind. His eyes traced the line of the northern horizon where the mountains met the sky. Somewhere beyond those peaks lay the frozen march, a land of myths and half-remembered warnings. For generations, it had been a place spoken of in low voices, a place where the old gods still dreamed in their ice-bound tombs. It had been 2 months since the first strange reports. A hunter returning from the northern slopes with eyes glazed and voice trembling. A watchtower found abandoned, its gates hanging open, a single black feather frozen to the latch. Then came the merchant caravan that stumbled into the city gates with frost clinging to their beards despite the autumn air, whispering of pale shapes in the snow that moved against the wind. Caelan had dismissed the stories at first, until the night the raven came. It was no common bird, but a massive, ash-gray creature with eyes like drops of molten gold. It landed upon the parapet where Caelan stood, its talons clicking against the stone. In its beak it held a strip of hide, curled tight around a shard of black ice that pulsed faintly in the moonlight. The hide bore a single symbol burned deep into the flesh, a spiral of thorns surrounding a hollow circle. He knew the mark. Every child in Valethorn did. It was the sigil of the Forgotten King, the first and last to rule both the north and south before the realm fractured into warring crowns. The mark had not been seen in over 400 years. That night Caelan dreamed of the frozen march. He saw vast walls of ice stretching to the heavens, heard the cracking of glaciers like the snapping of bones. And in the heart of that frozen waste, a figure cloaked in shadow whispered his name. The next morning he summoned his war council. The air in the great hall was thick with the smoke of pine torches. Maps were spread across the long oaken table, their edges weighted with daggers to keep the parchment from curling in the cold. His bannermen argued over supply routes, over the risk of sending men into the mountains before the first full moon of winter. Caelan listened, his hand resting upon the shard of ice, feeling its unnatural chill seep into his skin. The decision was made. Scouts would ride north at first light. Not soldiers, yet, but men and women who knew the high passes and could return unseen. They would seek out the source of these omens, and return with truth in place of rumors. While Caelan prepared his northward watch, far to the south, in the opulent halls of Caldrith, Queen Serenia Merle held court beneath a ceiling painted with the victories of her ancestors. Her gown was sewn with silver thread, her crown a circlet of hammered moon steel. Yet even amid such splendor, a shadow lay across her thoughts. For weeks her spies had whispered of unrest in the north, of strange lights and dead watchtowers. More importantly, they spoke of Caelan Drakemere's sudden withdrawal from the southern borders. Serenia had long sought to break Valethorn's hold on the trade routes through the Highmoor Valley. Now, with their attention drawn north, she saw her chance. She ordered her generals to ready the legions, but she was not blind to the risks. If the North truly harbored something dangerous, her own realm might feel its bite soon enough. Thus, she dispatched her most trusted emissary, Lady Maris, to ride north under the guise of negotiating a trade pact. In truth, Maris was to measure the strength of Veilthorn's armies, and perhaps learn why they stared toward the frozen march with such grim faces. Meanwhile, across the eastern sea, the Marrow-Deep Isles stirred. Their chieftain, Rorik the Ironwake, had been warned by his priests of omens upon the tide. Whales beaching themselves in the dead of night, fish rising belly up with eyes clouded white. Rorik cared little for omens, but much for opportunity. A distracted mainland was ripe for raiding. His longships were readied, their prows carved into the shapes of open-mouthed serpents, their oars polished for the long pull westward. Yet when Rorik dreamed, he dreamed of ice, not the soft snow of winter, but ice black as obsidian, stretching forever beneath a starless sky. He awoke with frost in his beard, though no winter had touched the isles. The first threads of a larger web were tightening. Veilthorn, Caldrith, Marrow-Deep, three crowns whose histories were written in blood, now drawn toward a storm none of them yet understood. The scouts Kaelin sent into the frozen march did not return as swiftly as planned. Days passed, then a week, then another. When the first rider finally staggered through the gates of Veilthorn Keep, he was half frozen, his eyes wide and unblinking as if fixed upon something far beyond the stone walls. His words came slowly, broken by shivers, each syllable hanging heavy in the hall. He spoke of an abandoned pass, of strange shapes glimpsed at the edge of torchlight, and of a sound beneath the ice like the groaning of a slumbering beast. The air, he said, grew so cold that steel grew brittle and snapped in the hand. Then came the figures, pale, gaunt, their eyes like empty moons, moving with unnatural silence. The scouts swore they did not breathe. Kaelin listened in silence. The rider collapsed soon after, his skin already losing its warmth. By morning, his body had turned cold and rigid, though the healers swore the frost in his hair was not of this realm's making. The remaining scouts were never found. Kaelin knew then that whatever stirred in the march would not remain there long. He summoned his captains, ordering them to double the watch along the northern border. Messengers rode south to summon distant bannermen. In the armories, forges burned day and night, the ring of hammer on steel echoing through the frozen courtyards. Meanwhile, in Caldrith, Lady Maris had reached Veilthorn under a banner of truce. She stood before Kaelin, her words courteous but edged. She spoke of trade routes, of grain shipments, but Kaelin could see her eyes lingering upon the maps in his war room, upon the black shard of ice now kept under glass. He told her little, for he trusted her less. But Maris saw enough. She rode back to Serenia with whispers of the North's unrest, of a danger that drew even the grim Lord Drakemere to caution. Serenia's plans shifted. No longer would she strike Veilthorn immediately. Instead, she would watch and wait, letting the North's troubles weaken them further before moving her pieces. Across the sea, Rorik's longships set sail. The first raids struck the unprotected fishing villages along the eastern coast, their fires visible for miles. Yet Rorik found no joy in plunder. His dreams had grown darker. He now saw a throne of ice rising from a sea of bones, and upon it a figure whose crown was a ring of black frost. Each morning, he awoke certain that the figure's gaze had fallen upon him. Winter deepened, the rivers slowed, then froze. The skies turned a pale, pitiless gray, and from the heart of the frozen march the first true storm came. It was no ordinary blizzard. Its snow fell not white, but tinged with shadow, each flake cold enough to sear the skin. Villages vanished beneath it, their hearths snuffed out in moments. Kalen stood upon the battlements as the storm approached, his breath freezing on his lips. Somewhere within that wall of black snow, he thought he saw movement. Not the shifting of wind, but the march of something vast, ancient, and patient. The awakening had begun. The black storm did not stop at the borders. It rolled over the watchtowers like a tide, swallowing the torches until only darkness remained. The men who faced it did not scream. There was no time. When the snow cleared hours later, the towers stood empty, their gates frozen shut from the inside, their walls glazed with a layer of ice that reflected no light. Kalen had no choice but to act. He called his banners, sending riders to every lord sworn to Veilthorn. Fires were lit upon the hills to signal the realm's mustering, and in the villages, men took up spears and women sharpened axes, for every hand would be needed. The frozen pass was sealed with barricades, though all knew it would not hold forever. To the south, Queen Serenia received word of the storm's devastation. She held council deep into the night, the chamber thick with the scent of burning cedar. Her generals urged her to strike Veilthorn now, while they were distracted, but Serenia was no fool. If the north truly faced a threat beyond mortal armies, weakening them might doom her own lands as well. Reluctantly, she sent envoys to propose an unprecedented truce, a temporary alliance between Caldrith and Veilthorn. The messenger arrived at Kalen's hall as the northern fires still burned. The terms were clear. Serenia would send her southern legions to aid in holding the northern border, and in return Kalen would grant her favorable control of the Highmoor trade routes for 5 years. Kalen read the offer in silence, then set it aside. Trusting Serenia was like trusting a wolf not to bite. Yet refusing her aid could mean ruin. While the kings and queens debated, Rorik the Ironwake made landfall on the mainland. His raiders swept inland not to plunder, but to fight something far stranger. They found villages frozen mid-motion, doors half open, soup pots still steaming, children clutching toys now encased in frost. And in the center of one such village stood a figure cloaked in black ice, its face hidden, its hands pale and clawed. The air around it shimmered with cold so deep it cracked stone. The first man to approach was struck down in silence, not by a blade, but by a sudden bloom of frost that burst from his chest, freezing him solid in an instant. Rorik himself hurled his axe at the thing, only to watch it stop inches from the figure's head, held fast in midair by nothing visible. The figure turned, its eyes 2 empty circles, and in that gaze Rorik felt something root itself deep in his bones. He fled that day, but the figure followed not with steps, but with presence. In his dreams, he now saw it standing at the prow of a ship made of ice, sailing through a sea of frozen corpses. The fragile balance between the 3 crowns was breaking. Kalen agreed at last to Serenia's truce, and the armies of North and South met at the Frostgate Pass, a massive archway carved into the mountain centuries before. Together, they built walls of timber and stone, mounted scorpions along the ridges, and dug deep fire pits to hold back the cold. But the storm that came next was unlike the first. This one did not howl or rage. It whispered. Its winds carried voices from the past, speaking in the tones of lost lovers, dead friends, and long-buried kin. Soldiers wandered into the snow, calling out names, never to return. The commanders ordered men to bind themselves with rope when on watch, but even then, some were found in the morning with frost in their eyes and smiles on their lips, as though they had seen something beautiful before the cold took them. In the heart of the storm came the enemy in truth. Not one, not 100, but an army of the pale-eyed dead. Their armor rhymed with frost, their weapons humming with the cold of the grave. And behind them, upon a beast of bone and ice, rode a figure wearing a crown of black frost, the same Kalen had seen in his dreams. The first clash at Frostgate was like steel striking stone. The living held the walls with fire and fury, hurling flaming pitch into the pale ranks below. Arrows hissed through the air, their heads wrapped in cloth and set alight. For a time it seemed the line would hold, until the beast of bone and ice moved forward. Its steps shook the ground, each hoof leaving a crater of frozen stone. Upon its back, the crowned figure raised one hand, and the fires along the wall died as if smothered by an invisible wind. Darkness swept over the pass, the only light now the cold shimmer of the dead. Kalen roared orders, rallying his men to the inner barricade. Serenia's southern legions fought with grim precision beside him, their shields locking in unison. Rorik's raiders, having arrived under the cover of night, flanked the enemy from the east, their war cries cutting through the howling wind. For a moment the three crowns fought as one. But the crowned figure did not waver. It descended from the beast, walking forward with the slow certainty of a tide. Each step brought the frost closer. When it raised its blade, a thing of black ice that seemed to drink the light around it, the dead surged forward with renewed hunger. The battle became chaos. Men slipped on the frozen stones, screaming as the dead dragged them into the white. Arrows shattered upon icy armor. Even fire could not cling to the pale ones for long. Serenia herself took the field, her spear darting like a serpent's tongue, felling foes faster than her guard could keep count. Rorik carved a path through the enemy ranks, his axe singing in his hands, each swing powered by a hatred he did not fully understand. Kalen knew they could not win by holding the wall. He ordered a retreat to the citadel beyond the pass, buying time for the last line of defense. The crowned figure watched them go, making no move to pursue, and that stillness chilled Kalen more than any charge. That night, as the living huddled in the citadel, the frost came again. But this time it came from within. The wells froze solid. The bread stores turned to ice. Men awoke with frost upon their lips. Somewhere deep in the halls, the crowned figure walked, unseen but felt, as though the very stones whispered its presence. Kalen, Serenia, and Rorik met in the war room for the first and only time without guards or scribes. There, Kalen placed the black shard of ice upon the table. "This," he said, "is the heart of it. When we found it in the march, we woke what sleeps. And now it comes for its crown." The shard pulsed faintly, its light dim but steady. Serenia leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "Then we break it." Breaking it proved harder than any of them imagined. No fire touched it. No hammer marked it. It was Rorik who thought to take it into the storm, to meet the crowned figure with the shard in hand. Kalen would carry it, Serenia and Rorik guarding his path. The final battle began not at dawn, but in the dead of night, beneath a sky lit only by the pale shimmer of frost. The dead came as before, endless and silent. The beast roared, shaking the snow from the mountainsides, and through them strode the three rulers, carving a path toward the crowned figure. When they reached it, the world seemed to fall silent. The figure regarded Kalen, its gaze colder than any winter. Slowly, it reached for the shard, and Kalen drove it deep into the crown upon its head. The ice screamed. The crown shattered, exploding into a storm of black frost that cut through armor, flesh, and bone alike. The dead fell where they stood, their bodies turning to ash in the wind. The beast crumbled into shards that melted into the snow. But the cost was steep. Kalen fell, his body frozen around the arm that had struck the blow. Rorik vanished into the storm, his fate unknown. Serenia returned to the south with both victory and grief. Carrying the tale of the night the frost was broken. Yet deep in the frozen march, beneath ice older than empires, a faint pulse of black light began to beat once more. The crowns had been broken, but the frost was patient.